Hello, my name is Ryan Hutchins. I am here at the Lorenzo A. Ramirez Library, located at my former college, Santiago Canyon College, with a statue of Lorenzo A. Ramirez. Who was Lorenzo A. Ramirez, you might ask? He was a parent involved in a court case called Mendez et al. Versus Westminster and the Orange County Unified School District, in which Thomas Estrada, William Guzman, Frank Palomina, Gonzalo Mendez, and Lorenzo Ramirez, on behalf of their children, fought to desegregate 4 city-based school districts in Orange County, California: Westminster, Santana, Garden Grove, and El Medina, where I am from and currently located. And each of these areas, there were separate schools intended for white children and other schools intended for Mexican children. I chose this topic not just because of my personal relationship to the area, but because it helps define a concept that is pretty important in understanding modern-day racial politics. The idea that institutional discrimination based on certain labels is not based solely on what people identify as, but what others perceive about them. This means that racial labels such as black, white, and brown are not fixed systems, but can be defined by certain situations. For instance, in this specific case, the people who they defined as Mexican in order to segregate the schools were not just people who had immigrated from Mexico or their kids, but was instead defined by skin color and last name. That was how they determined who would attend Mexican schools and who would attend white schools. To make matters more complicated, citizenship historically was only offered to white people. This means any person of Mexican origin who held citizenship was defined legally in some way as white. In other areas of California, people of Mexican descent were able to attend white schools, and segregation was still legal and written into law for Indigenous and Asian students. In fact, Gonzalo Mendez, the plaintiff in which the case is named after, own children attended white schools up until they attempted to attend school in Westminster. Simultaneously, however, segregated schools were creating a racial label for Mexicans. Despite the whiteness that their citizenship implied, in court, Mexican Americans were still presented as a non-white group. In fact, the decision that ultimately saw schools being desegregated for Mexican Americans and broadly others of Latina descent referred specifically to their descent. What defined this case was an argument based off the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, the right to equal protection under the law. This argued an inherent inequality was created by these schools by not affording Mexican Americans all the rights they deserved as citizens under the Constitution. Yet again, they highlight descent as a factor of discrimination, as seen in the quote. In this way, they could simultaneously identify Mexicans as othered for their ancestral background, but not in a way that had the same connotations as the word race. Mendez et al. Versus Westminster serves not only as a decision greatly impacting the Orange County school system and Mexican American rights in the 20th century, but as an example of the complexities of race in American society and how the labeling is fluid, ever-changing, and situational. Only by defining Mexicans as being discriminated against by factors of descent were they able to get desegregation under the law. Segregation based on racial status, the idea of being black, Asian, or indigenous, was still illegal, and although Mexicans were not seen as white in society, the fact that they were citizens and that citizenship was associated with whiteness meant that they could get into spaces initially intended for white people.